When did we begin to value the surface more than the substance? When did the polished smile become more powerful than the honest word?
You feel it, don't you? This creeping sense that the world rewards what looks good, not what is good. That we've traded reality for presentation. There was a time when depth was revered, when the quiet thinker held more weight than the loud performer, when character mattered more than charisma. But somewhere along the way, something changed. We stopped listening, and we started scrolling. We stopped asking questions, and started mimicking answers. Because it's easier, because it's faster, because we are told appearances are everything. Modern culture, loud, viral, superficial. It tells you to be seen, not to be understood, to be followed, not to be known, to impress, not to express. And so you adapt. You polish the image. You sharpen the angle. You build the perfect version of yourself, filtered, edited, rehearsed. Until one day, you forget where the mask ends and you begin. But here's the hard truth. The world doesn't want you to be real. It wants you to be valuable. And in today's marketplace, value is measured in visibility, not virtue. You think this is freedom? This endless parade of comparison and competition? You think validation is love? That applause is understanding? It's not. It's a game. And the rules were written to keep you playing forever. Eric Fromm once said, "If I am what I have, and if what I have is lost, then who am I?" Now ask yourself, if I am what I post, if I am what I present, if I am the perception of others, then who am I really? In the age of appearances, authenticity is rebellion. Look around. How many people do you know who are exhausted from pretending? From being everything for everyone but themselves? We've built a world of avatars, digital masks, echo chambers of performance. And when you dare to be honest, to be flawed, to be human, you're seen as weak, or worse, irrelevant. We've confused popularity with power, and silence with insignificance. But listen closely. The loudest voice isn't always the wisest. The most liked isn't always the most loved. The most visible isn't always the most valuable. You've been taught to market yourself, to brand your personality, to be a product before a person, and slowly, your worth becomes conditional. On likes, on shares, on praise. But do you know what can't be counted? Meaning, presence, truth. Nietzsche warned us, he who fights with monsters should look to it that he himself does not become a monster. The monster today is the image, the illusion, the curated self. And if you chase it long enough, you become it. So I ask you, when was the last time you were simply yourself? Not for the camera, not for the audience, but for you. When did you last speak without rehearsing, feel without filtering, show up without shaping yourself into something safer? This culture doesn't want you to think deeply, because depth takes time, and time doesn't trend. It wants you fast, reactive, digestible. It wants your attention, not your awakening. Because if you woke up, if you paused long enough to really look, you'd see the trap. You'd see the chains made of pixels and applause. And you'd realize you were never free. You were managed, conditioned, designed to consume and perform. But here's the good news. You can break the pattern. You can reclaim your life by remembering that the most valuable things aren't visible. Integrity, depth, love, stillness. You won't find them trending, but you'll find them in yourself. And maybe that's the real rebellion in the age of appearances. To stop performing, to stop chasing, to start being. Not perfect, not polished, but present. This isn't about abandoning the world. It's about refusing to be lost in it. It's about finding the courage to be seen without armor, to be known without disguise, to be whole without applause. Because in a world obsessed with how things look, the rarest thing you can be is real. Do you ever wonder what people are really clapping for? Is it you or the image of you? In today's world, applause isn't a reflection of truth. It's a response to performance. And the better the mask, the louder the crowd. You learn this early, that if you say what they want to hear, they smile. If you do what they expect, they accept. If you shine on cue, they reward. But stray from the script, and the silence is deafening. We live in a culture where the mask wins, where your curated self gets more respect than your honest self, where polish matters more than pain, where confidence is measured not by inner calm, but outer display. People aren't drawn to your truth. They're drawn to their version of you. So you adapt. You learn the rules. Smile even when you're breaking. Nod even when you disagree. Achieve even when you're empty. Because being real doesn't pay. Being likable does. And slowly you get good at it. Too good. You master the look, the tone, the timing. You know what to say, when to say it, and how to make it sound like you mean it. But deep inside, there's a quiet voice asking, if they love the mask, do they love me? That's the terrifying truth behind modern validation. It's not love. It's preference. It's optics. And it's conditional. Conditional on you being consistent, predictable, pleasant. People say they want authenticity, but what they really want is comfort. They don't want your mess. They want your highlight reel. As long as you're digestible, as long as you're convenient, you're welcome. But dare to be complex? Dare to have edges? Dare to say something uncomfortable or not smile on command. Watch how quickly applause turns to avoidance. We've turned connection into a marketplace. And in marketplaces, the best brands win. Not the best people. You are taught to become a brand. A walking advertisement for your own desirability. Your worth quantified. Your value ranked. Your humanity repackaged into a narrative they can consume. You know what that means? It means you're not living. You're selling. And the scariest part, you forget you're doing it. You wake up one day and realize you don't know where the mask ends and your real self begins. This isn't about deception. This is about survival. Because we've created a world where being true is dangerous. Where sincerity is risky. Where depth is inconvenient. You've seen it. The job interview where you smile through the anxiety. The date where you hide your vulnerability. The conversation where you pretend to care. Because to tell the truth is to lose control. To be honest is to risk rejection. And society whispers, better to be liked than to be seen. But what happens to a soul that is always performing? What happens to a person who never gets to show up without pretense? They begin to disappear. The tragedy isn't that others don't know you. It's that you don't know yourself. Carl Jung once said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But we've turned that privilege into a threat. Because who you truly are might not trend. It might not be easy to love. It might not be easy to sell. So we compromise. We become experts in pleasing, in adjusting, in blending in, until we forget how to stand alone. And here's the paradox. The more you perform, the more applause you get. But the more applause you get, the more lost you become. You build a life that looks perfect from the outside and feels hollow on the inside. Have you noticed? The people who seem to have it all together are often the ones unraveling in silence. Because it's exhausting to always be on, to never rest in the safety of your truth. And still we continue. Because the alternative, being unseen, is terrifying. We'd rather be loved for who we're not than be ignored for who we are. But what if we've misunderstood success? What if applause is not proof of value, but proof of performance? The crowd doesn't always clap for truth. Sometimes they clap for distraction. Sometimes they clap because they don't know what else to do. And here you are, basing your worth on noise. Think about this. When was the last time you were rewarded for being quiet? For being uncertain? For being honest about not knowing? We punish depth because it makes us feel, and feeling is inconvenient. But without it, what are we? Machines? Masks? Marketing campaigns? We need to remember that applause is not the goal. Connection is. And connection doesn't come from perfection. It comes from presence, from showing up even when you're unsure, even when you're vulnerable, even when you're afraid. So here's the question that matters. Will you keep chasing applause, or will you choose to live unmasked? Because in the end, the world doesn't need more performers. It needs people who are real, who are whole, who are willing to be seen, not for who they pretend to be, but for who they are. Not everyone will clap. Not everyone will stay. But those who do, those who see the real you and still choose you, those are the ones worth living for. And when you find that, you won't need the mask anymore. Because the greatest applause comes not from the crowd, but from the quiet inside that finally says, I see you, and you are enough. How did we end up here, where surface is strategy and depth is a liability? It wasn't always like this. There was a time when what mattered most was what you stood for, not how you stood out. When wisdom was valued over virality. When integrity mattered more than visibility. But in today's world, being shallow isn't just accepted. It's rewarded. Because shallow sells. We've built a culture where simplicity is marketable and complexity is too much work. Where the quick answer wins. Where the short video dominates. Where the loudest voice gets the mic. Why? Because depth takes time. And time, in the age of speed, is currency we're no longer willing to spend. You're told to be brief. Be bold. Be everywhere. Not be thoughtful. Be honest. Be real. And so, being shallow becomes a strategy, because the world pays attention to the echo, not the origin. In a job interview, you mention accomplishments, not failures. On social media, you post highlights, not doubts. In conversation, you offer punchlines, not pauses. Because showing your full self? That's too complicated, too slow, too risky. So we skim. We skim people, ideas, lives. We collect impressions instead of understanding. And this has consequences. We date without connection. We learn without understanding. We speak without thinking. The depth of our lives has become a marketing campaign. Our personality, clickable. Our beliefs, editable. Our identity, negotiable. But here's the cost. When everything is for show, nothing is for real. When every gesture is strategic, every emotion becomes performative. When every truth is curated, nothing can grow roots. We begin to distrust sincerity because we assume there's always an angle. And there usually is. Because in this world, sincerity without strategy is punished. Naivety, they call it. You speak your mind, you're called reckless. You show vulnerability, you're called weak. But fake confidence, fake certainty, fake success? Now that gets you praise. We've created a system where authenticity is optional and appearance is essential. And slowly, even the most grounded among us begin to play along. Because if the game rewards shallow, then depth becomes self-sabotage. Look at the influencers, the brands, the self-help gurus. How many of them sell the image of truth rather than the truth itself? Do you think that's an accident? Of course not. It's a strategy, because the image is scalable. Depth is not. So you find yourself packaging pieces of your life, making your story palatable, making your pain poetic. And when you try to go deeper, to talk about loneliness or uncertainty or the fear of wasting your life, people get uncomfortable. They change the subject. They scroll away. We are taught to numb, not to know. To react, not to reflect. Because a shallow world doesn't want you to think too much. Because if you did, you might stop playing. You might stop buying. You might stop pretending. Think of how schools teach you. Facts, not questions. Answers, not inquiry. Think of how dating apps work. Pictures, not conversations. Categories, not complexity. Think of how careers are built. Linkage sommaries, personal brands, buzzwords. Everything is designed to be consumed, not contemplated. And the more you fit in, the more you disappear. Because fitting in means trimming your edges, dimming your doubts, forgetting your fire. But here's the hard truth. If being shallow works, it's only because we've agreed to reward it. We created the demand. We built the stage. We became the audience. And now we're trapped in the performance. But what happens when we stop applauding? What happens when we reward honesty instead of polish? Substance instead of spectacle? It starts with you, with refusing to be a brand, with refusing to reduce yourself to a highlight reel, with being bold enough to ask, what am I hiding behind? What am I afraid they'll see? Because maybe the part of you that you're most afraid to show is the part that someone else is most desperate to see. Maybe it's not your perfect moment that inspires others. Maybe it's your real ones, your breakdowns, your uncertainties, your courage to be messy and meaningful at the same time. Thoreau once said, "The mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. But the louder the world gets, the quieter our desperation becomes. It hides behind filtered photos and carefully worded captions, behind job titles and clever bios. And we wonder why we feel alone. We're lonely not because we lack connection, but because we lack depth in our connection. You don't remember someone because they impressed you. You remember them because they touched something real in you. And that can't happen if we keep performing. If we keep choosing shallow because it's safer. So here's the invitation. Stop strategizing your personality. Start showing your soul. You don't need to be loud to be heard. You don't need to be popular to be powerful. You just need to be honest. In a world addicted to surfaces, your depth is not a flaw. It's a revolution. No one warns you about the side effects of pretending. They praise your success, your discipline, your ambition. They admire your composure, your resilience, your smile. But no one asks what it costs you. There are consequences we don't talk about, because they're inconvenient, because they don't fit the narrative of a tidy life, because they're harder to post. We talk about burnout, but we don't talk about soul death. We talk about stress, but not about spiritual starvation. We talk about overwork, but not about underliving. What happens when you become everything the world rewards and lose everything that makes life worth living? We live in a culture of silent suffering. of high performers with hollow eyes, of achievers with anxious hearts, of beautiful lives on the outside and unbearable emptiness on the inside. No one talks about the price of becoming what everyone else needs you to be, because when your identity is built on performance, your rest feels like failure. You don't stop, because stopping means facing what you've avoided, and what you've avoided is you. There's a kind of grief that comes from living someone else's life, a quiet ache that follows you into every room, that whispers through your accomplishments, "This isn't it." You scroll through pictures of yourself smiling and wonder who that person is. You hear your own voice in conversations and barely recognize the tone. You feel more familiar with your public image than your private thoughts. This is not just emotional fatigue. This is identity erosion. You start breaking in places no one can see. Your passions flatten. Your wonder dims. Your dreams feel irrelevant. You look like you have everything, but inside you're starving. And the worst part, people keep congratulating you, because they don't see the cost. They only see the currency. Your life becomes a transaction. Your time is a product. Your presence is performance. But what happens when the mask becomes too heavy? What happens when the applause fades? Do you even know how to be still? To be quiet? To be alone without feeling lonely? We have raised a generation of people who are terrified of their own silence, because silence reveals the truth, and truth is dangerous in a world built on illusion. You weren't meant to carry this much, to smile this wide while breaking this deeply, but we reward suppression. We applaud invulnerability. We mistake numbness for strength. The consequences are real. Anxiety that never rests, relationships that feel like negotiations, an inner life that feels distant, muted, disconnected. You say yes to everything and forget what it feels like to say yes to yourself. You fill every moment with noise because you're afraid of what quiet might expose. You chase goals that aren't yours because standing still feels too risky. The truth? You're exhausted, not just physically, existentially. You're tired of editing your feelings, tired of explaining your boundaries, tired of justifying your need for peace. But you don't talk about it because you've been taught that discomfort is weakness, that emotion is drama, that vulnerability is danger. So you bottle it up until it spills in the wrong places, until you snap at someone you love, until you cry when no one's watching and you don't even know why. These are the cracks, the warning signs. But we've normalized the cracks. We glamorize the grind. We sanctify suffering. What's rewarded isn't real. What's real isn't rewarded. And so we keep quiet. We keep moving. We keep pretending. But every time you betray your truth to meet expectations, a part of you disappears. You lose access to your instincts. You doubt your own voice. You start living according to a script you didn't write. And then you wonder why you feel like a stranger in your own life. Henry David Thoreau wrote, "The mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation." That desperation, it's not loud. It doesn't scream. It whispers. It numbs. It distracts. It's waking up tired even after sleeping. It's losing interest in what used to make you feel alive. It's forgetting how to dream. And yet, you keep going, because stopping feels like failure, because stillness feels unsafe. But here's what no one tells you. Silence is not the enemy. Stillness is not surrender. They're where the healing begins. They're where the real answers live. You don't have to keep pretending. You don't have to keep performing. You are allowed to be seen in your confusion. You are allowed to not have it all together. You are allowed to need rest. The world may not reward your honesty, but your soul will. You don't need permission to be whole. You just need to stop waiting for applause that will never come, and begin choosing yourself in the quiet, in the truth, in the depth. Because the consequences of hiding are far greater than the risk of being seen. This is your life, and it's slipping by, not because you're lazy, but because you're lost. In other people's expectations, in invisible obligations, in a performance you never auditioned for. But you can write a new script, one that honors your truth, one that lets you breathe. And maybe that's where freedom begins. Not with applause, but with honesty. Not with more, but with less. Less pretending, less proving, less performing. You don't have to break to begin again. You just have to stop lying to yourself. The consequences we don't talk about, they are the ones that slowly erase you. And the moment you name them, you begin to reclaim the life that's always been yours. Unmasked, unedited, unapologetic. Finally, you become someone who no longer needs to be celebrated to feel complete. Because the most important person finally sees you. You.